Welcome. So this is our last presentation of the last 3 days. We've had a great time. We've seen hardware, we've seen workflow, we've seen software, we've seen plugins. We've seen various case studies at the largest, at the highest level and the indie level. Today, in this last presentation, we're talking with Mark Bach. Mark has been on my little show, Final Cut Grill. He was on episode 40, you said?
Yeah.
And he's going to go through one of his projects and show you his whole workflow. All right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to grab my phone and get out of your way, let you go. I'll come up in a little bit.
So welcome, guys. Just as a little introduction, I work at DirecTV, and it all started a while ago when DirecTV decided to create some new content. So DirecTV started creating, they came out with the idea, we need to offer some content, because up until that point, they were only distributors. They would grab content from all the channels, put it together in the satellite, and then you get it at home, right? So then they wanted to add something with value to the whole thing. And then from there, it came out the idea of creating a channel. So inside of DirecTV, even if you have, a lot of people, they don't know it, but there's a channel by DirecTV. And inside of that channel, we create some content. So some of the content that you can see in there is like from live TV to TV shows, for scripted TV shows. It could be live events like that one in there, like the boxing one. Then we have Dan Patrick is live every day. And then we have all the ones that are scripted. Everything that we do in-house and everything that is delivered to us, it's being delivered in 4K because we're prepping for what's coming, right? So basically, we're going to talk about two shows in this presentation. One is just an introduction, and the other one we're going to just look inside of the project. The first one I want to talk about is Guitar Center Sessions. Guitar Center Sessions is a show in collaboration with the store Guitar Center. And in there, we have a show that is an hour long. It's 10 bands per season. That's what we shoot. It's 2 seasons per year. In those, we have a show of an hour that it comes out of shooting an hour of interview and an hour of a concert that we do in there. Then out of that, all this is shot with 6 cameras, Red Epics at 5K, and then we record 2 bands a day. So out of 5 days, we get up with like 40 terabytes of footage, and that is like 24 hours of content generated every day. And that turnaround is like we shoot it, and then the next day we start editing the first show. So it needs to be all prepared. So you would think that Final Cut is really good working with red files and all this stuff, but what happens is that when you have to work with not one show, but several shows at the same time, if you start putting all this raw footage into one place, all of a sudden it's full. So we have to come up with a workflow, and this is basically the workflow. We start with the red media that is around 40 terabytes, and then it's being transcoded on set, and then we make ProRes LTE out of that, and then that is when it ends up in the scene, right? So we can have 20 shows in the scene without filling it up. But if we were working in RAW, just put 4 and nobody can work. So out of that, we go into Final Cut and we create a library. We ingest all the footage, we put it in there, and then we break up that library into 2 libraries. And one stays on location and the other one goes remotely. And one editor is editing the live concert and the other one is editing the interviews. And then I would say there's a third copy that goes actually back to Guitar Center Sessions, to Guitar Center, that they are deciding which song goes where and what part of the interview they want us to edit, right? Then after that, we just combine the 2 timelines into one, where we have an interview and it's a song and an interview, song, interview until the end. And then that's an hour long. All this goes into Resolve. We do the online out of the red files that we got from the beginning. We put it back in, because when you broadcast, you have to say the first 6 channels have to be 5.1, so it goes like left, right, center, LFE, and then left surround and right surround, and then the stereo, right? So you go like, if I don't have tracks, how am I going to order? You use the rolls for that, and then you can export with the two in them, okay? Now, let's talk about this one, BKB. BKB is a show that is, it's a two-part show, let's call it. One is a live event, that is a boxing event, actually happens here in Las Vegas. And then the other one is called Unfiltered, and it's a show, it's a docuseries that comes out of the following the fighters, so then you get to know them, right? So let's watch an introduction of the show, and let's go get a glimpse of what it is.
A journey has begun. The desert, barren and unchanged. This is the landscape of modern combat sports. A new challenger has arrived, BKB, forging a fresh path to lead us from the desolate terrain to a city that is unmatched by any other. The boxing capital of the world, Las Vegas, Nevada. This is fighting in its purest form. The next step in the evolution of combat sports. Climaxing in a hard-hitting championship bout between Brian Vera and Gabriel Rosado, competing for the BKB middleweight title. This is the story of a fighter's journey into the exciting new sport. This is BKB, Unfiltered.
So, as you can see, there was a lot of gadgets in there, like drones, everything shot with the reds, and we used the Mobi also for that. But let's talk about how we make it, right? This show is a non-scripted show, so we don't have any script when we get all the footage. We get up to like 30 terabytes of footage out of that. So it goes 3 episodes per round. Out of those, it's like 2 episodes go before the show, the main pay-per-view event, and then 1 episode goes after. So everything, as I said, is being shot with a red, and then we record with dual audio. Everything is recorded with separate audio devices and then the cameras, and then we have to get all things together working perfectly, like super quick. Then the libraries that we end up with like more than 5,000. Actually, you'll see it. It's pretty big. And then everything has to have a quick turnaround. So the delivery date of the first episode, we have 21 days to get it. That's easy. Easy done. But the thing is that you have to keep in mind that we get all the footage. We're shooting, and we start getting the footage. We don't know what we have. We don't know what's going to go in the episode. And sometimes what happens is we're still shooting. We're getting to like this day, and then they shoot something that is going to end at the end of the episode. So we get it like 4 days before, and we have to decide how to cut it, where to put it, if it's good or not. And we don't know until we get it, okay? The second episode, we have 15 days. So the first one we had 3 weeks. The second one we have 2 weeks only. And then the third one, we'll have 1 week to turn around. Especially because, I don't know if you know it, but the FCC now requires that all the shows that are being broadcast, they need to be captioned before they air. You cannot do live captioning anymore. So we cannot deliver the show the day before, and then somebody's going to type whatever they're saying live. We have to deliver it first, color correct it, mix it, send it to caption, and get it back. So that it cut like 3 days out of that. Before we were around here, now we have 3 days less. So to get all those, especially the last one, to get those shows with that short amount of time, we have to come out with a workflow that actually could make, because we cannot edit days. We cannot edit in less days because then it's going to be a bad show. So what we have to do is we have to cut somewhere else. So thinking about all this stuff, how to make it work, actually it's pretty similar to Guitar Center Sessions, but you'll see how later it transforms into different things. So we start with like around 30 terabytes of media, we transcode everything into ProRes, we put it in the sand, and then 2 editors will work in parallel in different parts. So what we start seeing and talking with the producer, hey, this happened the other day, it's really good, or the other day happened the other thing, and then we start taking notes. We break the episodes into cards, and then we give okay, you Kirk, you're gonna work in this card, and I'm gonna work in the other card. And then we start putting the cards together, and then we end up with a skeleton of an episode. That's what we do. So then we are working in parallel from the sand The media is living in there. We're sharing everything. And then after that, we're going to go to color and finish in 4K. But this is how the library looks like. You know, we have a lot of events in there. And especially what happens is that we end up with like 6,000 items down there. How are you going to find all those things in there, right? So what we did is we came up with a lot of events and a lot of keywording. And also, we use every single tool that comes from intelligent systems. We're using sync a link to sync the audio and the video with one click. We can get like 200 files synced in like 1 minute, you know? And everything with roles applied to, like, if the audio guy was putting his little machine, was putting like lab, boom, and all these things, and sometimes the scenes and all this stuff, all these things they end in the metadata of the clips. So it's easy for us to filter everything. So also, we started implementing Lumberjack. And Lumberjack, it helped us a lot, especially with the live event. Because what happens is that you have a lot of people shooting here in in Las Vegas, and we have two crews, the one that is the live broadcast event, and the other one that is the unfiltered, right? And with Lumberjack, I can be in Los Angeles, sitting in my edit bay, watching the live feed, and keywording everything. So first round, second round, this boxer against this boxer, good punch, knockdown, knockout, all this stuff. And then I get all the footage. It doesn't matter which camera it is. I'm going to cross-reference with those logs, and then I get all back. And we'll see that when we go to the demo. This is what the timeline looks like. It looks pretty simple. We have, you know, this is a timecode track. Forget about it. It's just for reference. We have the video track. As you see, there's not that much. It's just like, you know, we try to simplify. I've always been, even in Final Cut 7, I was not one of those that do the Starway to Heaven thing, you know, with like 20,000 tracks. I always try to keep it really simplified. So for me, working in this thing is even better, you know, because it forces, well, you cannot actually do it, you know. So you can see the audio is right here, and then we have splits. This we do it, actually we do it for saving, you know, to backing us up, because the mix is not being done here in the United States, because the tight deadline, what we do is we ship it to Spain, where a friend of mine actually does the mix for us. He works at Deluxe in Spain, and we can get it right away, because we can finish working at night, send it to them. They can work over at night, that is their day, and then we get it the next day. So for us, it's just like the next day we have the mix done. But nobody's working at night, you know. So that it looks super simplified. If I go to Logic, this would convert, this is just the audio. So this is how complicated would be that timeline in Final Cut. Let's go back. So you see how many clips I have in here, and then how complicated it would be if it was with track environment. So now we're gonna go into Final Cut.
Mark, if you don't mind, I'm gonna watch this.
Yeah, go ahead. So in here, what I have is I simplified the three. Usually we have the 3 episodes, because what happens is that we combine the footage that we get in all the episodes. We don't know what it's going to end in which episode, right? Because there's no script. So what we do is we end up having one library with everything. We start putting all the footage, and then we start making the episodes. In this case, what I did is I simplified everything and I brought just one episode in the library. And it's only the texts that are being used in the timeline. In this case, we only have like 400, events in here. That's what, we can see down here. But what we did in this case is every single day of shooting, we're breaking it up into an event. So then when a producer or a director is sitting with us in the room, they're saying like, I remember one day this boxer said this thing. And then what day is that? They were here, they were there. And then we can find it right away, go into that day, and then we can find the surrounding footage. So it's better to have separate events instead of having one event where you put all the files in there and you like go crazy if you want to match frame something. In this case, you match frame something in the timeline, it's going to bring you with the surrounding clips that happened that day or that situation. If we have separate things happening in the same day, like for example, we shoot in the morning in one location and then in another one, we usually break it into two things, because we break it into scenes. Like for example, they're training in the morning and then they go to a restaurant at night or whatever. We break it that way. So in here, we can see, like, this is just simplified, but this will be every single day of shooting with the location, so the producers feel familiar with, like, hey, you know, it was in Las Vegas, it was in the Neon Museum, we have that clip that happened, whatever, you know, that boxer, and everything is keyworded. So I can find every single fighter, so if I want that guy is right there, you know, and we did it for people, for locations. In this case, we still weren't using Lumberjack. We did it in the live event, but for now and on, we're gonna use Lumberjack constantly, because we can have the producer itself. He can be logging everything. He's saying, like, I'm interviewing this guy, I'm doing everything, and he's like really happy with it. I created, I think it was like up to 7 users to use Lumberjack, and the one that was logging the most, it was the producer. And here in the event files is where actually we use Lumberjack. And it was really interesting because usually you get like these files. I think the live event, it was shot with like 7 cameras. And then these 7 cameras, we get back one long QuickTime that can be like 3 hours long that comes from the truck. And then, because what they do is they have all these cameras connected to the truck, and then in the truck they record each camera into as a keypros, I think they use, and then we get these keypros back, and then we back them up, and then we get the footage, right? So in this case, what happens is you have a 2-hour long or 3-hour long clip. If you try to find one round inside of that thing, you can go crazy because you don't know where it is. You can start skimming and all this stuff. With Lumberjack, what happened is that we could break everything into activities. So I can look at all the first rounds of every single boxer. I can see all the cameras and the multicam clips. So I can see the single angle and look at all the round or whatever I want to do. In this case, I can go also to people, and I can find, people here, and I can find the specific round of a specific guy, and I actually can create smart collections. So then I can combine, let's say I want to see the first round of this boxer and this boxer. Or I can say, I want to see the best knockouts of the first round, or whatever, the best combinations of the first round. So that way, when we build the last episode, that is actually the one that we had less time, that is where we could squeeze more time into the edit and less into like going around footage and finding things, right? So it was really, really helpful. And then in here, we could find like all the knockdowns, all the knockouts, and all the stuff. It's single cameras, multicam cameras. I can go inside and look at every single angle and look at that knockout or knockdown.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it was like we squeezed out 2 days of managing files and be able to dedicate the 7 days of edit that we had, instead of having to do 2 days of managing files and only 5 days of editing,
right,
thanks to this thing. And also, because we use all the other tools, like synchronizing files on the fly and all the stuff, like one click with single link and all this. So out of that thing, we start building the episode. All the episodes are built in here. And let's actually have a look at this. So, as you can see, we have tons of stuff in there in the timeline. We have sound effects. We roll everything to be able to locate everything. So in this case, you can go crazy looking for something in the timeline. That's why the timeline index is super helpful. We can go here, find all the microphones. You know, we can find the boom. You can actually separate, you know, all this came from the sound guy. You know, because we use single link, all this metadata was coming from the sound guy, putting it like, you know, this channel 1 is boom, channel 2 is lab, channel 3 whatever. So all that stuff, single link, boom, just put it right there. We didn't have to type anything. Also, yeah. And then what we did is we created the SOTs, so we can have the SOTs. So every time that, you know, the commentators on you know, in the broadcast, they say something that is interesting, like, oh, knock down, whatever, you know, and they start yelling. We can have that thing and put it right there. We can find it in the timeline.
You say SOT, you mean sound on tape?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just want to double check.
Yeah. You
yeah.
would say like,
yeah, whatever.
What tape is that? So yeah, that's what we split everything, and then we can find it right away. because working in a small project is super easy to find things, right? You have a 30-second, you have a 2-minute, a 5-minute. You can have a lot of elements, but once you start having a timeline like this heavy, then is when you start getting lost, right? And then you say like, what was that clip, or what is the music that I have? What is sounding right there? And then you can find the music right there. All those are highlights. So it is true that people say that working without tracks, you can organize the footage, but I don't need to know where in the organization if I just can highlight and find them right away with my eyes without having to go to scroll down into tracks. I actually find it really, really helpful. The thing that I don't have to patch anything to put a clip on the timeline, So.
No more patching.
Yeah.
Hey, so I have a quick question,
Yeah, cool.
and I'll let you get back to it. I had a great discussion with a guy last night at the DCC meetup at the Cosmo, and he was saying, I do a broadcast show. It's classic cars for Fox Sports, I think, and his technique in Premiere is he puts in his open, and he puts in his close, and he lines the close so it's going to be his 2850 or whatever it has to be. And then he says, then I fill in the thing. And it was a classic, like, well, if I can't do that, how could I possibly do my job, right?
Yeah.
So with a magnetic timeline, you can't really do that. How do you get your TRT exactly where you need it to be?
Because I'm looking down here all the time.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Down there.
Yep, there it is. Oops.
Like, why do I need to have a clip? I don't know where it's gonna. I know that I'm gonna have that logo at the end, right? And let's say if my show has to be like 25 minutes, 28 minutes, I know that clip has to end right there. So I can always check down there and see if I'm hitting the time that I have to fit, right? Yeah. I don't want to worry about if that clip is in there or it's going to be in the way when I put a longer clip and I'm going to delete it. I don't want to know that.
Yeah, so if you have nothing selected, that's going to give you your TRT. The minute I select something, it gives me the TRT of that clip.
Exactly.
Very good.
So that way...
You know what? I didn't realize that.
Well,
it was the TRT for the whole thing.
Yeah, that's how I do it. So when I'm trimming something, then I know if
I swear I learn something every time I do one of these.
I know if I'm like one frame off or whatever. Yeah. I go down there. Oh yeah.
Yep.
So I find it really useful, to be there all the time. So that's how we do it. But I don't know. I just never worry about how long it's gonna be. I just start putting things in the timeline. We make it work. And then is when we say, okay, how much we have to lose? We start trimming.
Yep.
And then we end up to the framing zone where you're like, I need to lose like 5 frames or 1 frame or 20 frames, and then you start like going into clips. But it's never difficult to hit the. And actually, I gotta tell you one thing. We're lucky because we own the own channel that we are airing, so we can actually schedule whatever we want after or before. So we don't have, in this case, in this show, we don't know how much content we're gonna get. So we're not locked to a specific time for the whole show. So we can go 1 minute up or down. It doesn't matter. So in this case, we're not that tight.
It's not the same thing. But the point being is that as with most things in this business, there are multiple ways to get there.
Yeah.
And I think that when people are kind of on the fence, like, do I really want to do this? I always say, I promise you there's a way to do it because, we have all these interviews of people doing stuff exactly like what you're doing. They've found a way. And it may not be exactly that way, but there's always a way. Yeah. There's always a way.
Yeah.
What else do you want to show?
Yeah. Well, in this case, I want to show also, like after reading the Focus workflow book, we realized that we were going back and forth constantly for titles, and specifically for credits at the end, right? Where you're just like, there was something misspelled, and we would go back and forth constantly with graphics, like, can you render that title card? Can you do another one? Can you change this? Can you change that? Can you do the lower third? So we started creating everything in-house. I mean, in the timeline. In the timeline. In this case, I'm sorry, but the font that we use is not installed in this computer. That's why it's not exactly the same.
I thought that was a bold design choice.
No. So, but in this case, we created everything in here, and it actually happened that something was misspelled and all this stuff, and it was like 11 p.m. We had to deliver the show last night. Actually, this was delivered last night.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So we delivered this show last night. It hasn't been aired yet. And we had some changes in the title cards, and we were able to do it like right there. Nobody else was in the channel. Everybody was gone. There was no graphics people, nobody. So we were able to change it, render it, and deliver it. So those are the things that we're using in here that are built in Final Cut. We use a lot of markers also because they say a lot of bad words, so we have to mute them, right? And then what we do in this case, we mark them with markers. We export that. The marker list, we use Producer's Best Friend to be able to export that into a list. And then we send that to the sound guy, and the sound guy not only gets the markers into Pro Tools, but it also knows which word is, you know? So then for sure he can get that word, because sometimes it's like 3 people screaming in there, ah, and you don't know what they're saying. And it's like, what? That word just aired, right? So we cannot have that, and we put all the markers with the list. We can get it, and it's super efficient.
Do they have to censor swear words if they're in another language?
No, actually, no. No, we don't. But if
there's always a workaround, people.
No, we have to do it only in English, and yeah.
I'm sorry. It just dawned on me. That's an interesting question I've never asked.
So yeah.
So do you have a section of this you want to play for us?
Yeah.
BKB2 is here. The newest
sport
of field of
extensive sound
combat.
Design after this?
Yes.
Comprised of
It does.
fighters from around
So they'll
the
like
globe.
amp it up.
Yeah,
crazy.
everything goes
relentless
crazy
approach.
with like sounds of punches, sound effects.
There was a lens flare back there. Is that something you added, or is that?
No, it was a camera.
Climaxing in a ferocious main event between Gabe Rosado and Curtis Stevens. Stepping into the pit, it will be man against man, each wanting to take home the BKB middleweight title.
Oh, there's the Neon Museum shots.
Yeah.
Cool.
This is BKB Unfiltered.
Yeah, it's too bad you can't do professional work with this, man. Thanks, Mark. Last chance. Any questions for Mark? There's a guy in the back there with a beard.
Yeah, so when you guys are going through and you guys are looking for B-roll, right, and you have a producer in the back, what is typically your method of finding something?
So I ask, when they're asking for a specific thing that happened one day, I go like, what was that day?
Say you had to find something in a given location that was like a knockout or something.
Okay, in this case, if it was a knockout, it would be the event files. I know that they are there. So I would go specific to that knockout, and then I would look for it. Or if not, I would just filter in here and say like, okay, what do you want to see? A knockout from who? And I would go in here and say like, okay, keywords, you know, and check all. And what do you want to see? Oh, you want to see the knockout or knockdown of...
Latest version too, we should highlight a feature. You can expand that out now. And you can scroll it.
Oh. So here we go, and I can go and say, like, for example, Javier Garcia. Okay. I can filter, and now I can see all the knockdowns of this guy.
Knockouts.
No, sorry, knockdowns, sorry. I want to say all. So only this guy. It's knockdowns in this case.
Oh,
It was not knockout. So I can just go straight to that. I can see them right away. All the cameras, the guy on the floor, the guy running. And I can even go to the multicam clip and see it right there, you know. This will be a single...
Faster than the way you used to do things?
Oh, I mean...
Scan.
Just ask for something else. What do you want? Do you want, I don't know, best combination? So I think it's a good combination of Julian Pollard. Right there. There's one clip.
To make a timeline with selects.
Yes. So I don't need to. I don't need that thing that, you know, there's some people call it the pancake editing.
Pancake, yeah.
When they have one timeline.
Vashi Nedamansky,
Exactly.
he advocates that.
You have those two timelines, you know, on screen, and then you grab from one timeline to the other one. I don't need to do that because I can go right here and I can just filter everything that way. So I don't need to build those timelines.
There's your pancake right there
Exactly.
on the top. And then I pull that down.
So that way I can find things right away. I just need to go and find the boxer that I want, and he's going to show me exactly that thing.
And I got to say, Mark.
Is that a filter that you were looking for a lot of the time? Would there be a way to maybe keep that for later and have that filter always come up?
Oh yeah. What is not in this library, but we'll do is we create smart collections for saying like I want to have a smart collection of the fight of these two guys, and then everything is inside, and then we can break it into like, just say, show me favorites of that, or best shots.
So for instance, if you always wanted to find this, you could just save that as a new smart collection.
Exactly down here. Yeah. And I can name it and say exactly, with the names that I want. So that way, instead of going through those clips that I said it were like 3 hours long and try to find those little punches that are like 3 seconds, 4 seconds, if I mark everything live when it happened, then when I get all the files, I don't lose that time. Think about the time that I have to spend and watch that footage and log it after it happened, right? In this case, I don't have to. I watch the file live as it's captured. I get all the files, and in one day, I'm telling you, it took us like 3 hours to get, I think it was like 10 terabytes of footage. It was like 7 cameras, and we got it synchronized with audio, and then everything keyworded to know exactly what happened in what time. 3 hours. If you would like to watch one file out of those, it would take me 3 hours. So multiply it by every camera, and then you do the math, and you figure out how much time we save. So it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, I think it was right around the time that you were on the show where I got sort of convicted about my old school string out method of dealing with B-roll. And there are some advantages to it. I perceived that there were advantages to working that way, but I literally went through my own transformational way of looking at things and realizing, taking advantage of all of the abilities of the browser.
Yep.
I can use my keywords. I can filter favorites. I can filter rejected or unused, and then I can search. And when you take advantage of all of those things, this becomes a virtual morphing string out, if you will. And when you have the little orange thing on that says this clip has been used, I can see it. It's like, I've already used that. Here's some stuff I haven't used. And that's exactly the functionality that I used to get with the string outs, but it's faster.
And not just that, Chris, keep in mind that when you have it in the timeline...
But it was like you who made me do that.
Me?
Yeah.
If you look at the timeline, it's super hard to see something. If I go to the browser, I can see the icon, and actually I can just like skim and see inside. Mm-hmm. So visual representation, I know that this is an interview just without having to click anything. I just right away, I see that this is an interview. This is not what I'm looking for. So it's pretty easy to find something instead of like going through a timeline. Is that the clip that I'm looking for? I actually did that before. I remember working in Final Cut 7, I would put the selects in the timeline, and then the things that I would like, I would put it in the V track in the second one. So then when I open the timeline, those are the ones that I want. But right now I don't have to do that. I just go here and I just do Control F, and I would see all the favorites. I'm just gonna go to the library, and those are my favorites. So I see the representation of those clips instead of seeing a rectangle in a timeline. Do
you find it frustrating when you're talking to people and they say, yeah, but I need to do it the old way. I need to do it this way. I need to do it my way.
Yeah, because actually there has been, with the adoption of Final Cut 10, it's been a lot of like, people were not willing to change because there's no willing to learn something different. So it's like, I know this thing, it works this way, why do I have to learn something else that works differently?
Because it's faster.
but they don't think it's faster because they think like, it's gonna take me 3 days instead of to edit this thing, that's gonna take me 1 day, so I'm gonna go slower.
There's a question here, then Wes.
Are you finishing on ProRes LT?
No, everything is being edited in ProRes LT, and then we go to Resolve. We reconnect with the raw files, and then we master in ProRes 4444 at 4K, Ultra HD, not 4K, Ultra HD. In this case, it's stereo only, but in Guitar Center Sessions, it's surround and stereo.
Wes?
So I want to go back to the string out thing, because I want to think differently, and I want to try to stop using string outs. But I can't get all my clips in my virtual string out browser area and play through them all in one play. Like with the string out in the timeline, I press play and they all play.
Yeah.
In the browser, I press play, it stops. Press play, it stops. So I'm wondering how you get around that.
Well,
there's a little trick. And if you just play the clip, and before it ends, just press down, you go to the next one. Okay. So before it ends, okay, that's not what I want. That's not what I want. That's not what I want. That's the one I want.
Okay.
And then I edit.
Thank you.
That's a trick.
Right, because I always want to put like, you know, all the
Yeah.
ones together.
Yeah.
And so just got to go through all the takes. And
That's a classic Scott Simmons workaround thing. Or if it does get, oh, actually you're in loop mode, or we're in loop mode. But if it does get to the end, let me just shuttle it down here. If it does get to the end, you can then, I believe, still down arrow.
Yeah, but it doesn't play.
It doesn't play.
You
all
want
the
it
way
to continuous
through. Yeah.
play.
Yeah. So if you're watching the chiclet, you just can down arrow. Now the one downside to that is that it's going, if you do have a selection of the clip, which presumably you made for some reason, it's going to jump into the selection point. And I will admit, there are times when you're in that awful part of an edit, we're like, ugh, I just need one more thing. You might find something out of, like there. That I might be able to use that. So sometimes there are things out of the selections, and it's there. You got to look for it. But
Yeah. What I do in these cases is I select everything, so I do Command A, and then Option X, so I don't have any ins and outs.
I knew there was a shortcut for that, but I couldn't remember.
And then I can play from the beginning, and if I go to the next one, it's going to play from the first frame. Oh, also, another thing that we do is, now that I see this, is when we import music, because it's every time that we finish, we have to give a report of the songs that we used and all this stuff. We have to go to each vendor and say, like, okay, how much is this song and all this stuff. So what we do is when we import the footage, we keyword it with the vendor. So let's say it comes from Killer Tracks, or it comes from 5 Alarm, or it comes from, I don't know, Extreme Music. We just tag everything. So when we're
Very
done,
smart.
we export an XML, we go to Producer's Best Friend, and we say, like, okay, use music keyword. And then it gives us just a list with all the songs, and then we see in the list, you can actually see the keywords. So you can go, okay, this song, it belongs to this guy, and then, legal, they can go and call them and say, like, what's going on, So,
any last questions? Let's thank Mark for coming. Thank you, Mark.